1971. The Lougheed Conservatives were elected in August of 1971 to government. September 71, I got a job at CKYL Peace River because a guy that worked there ran and got elected. And so there was an opening at CKYL, 5,000 watt radio station in northern Alberta, and so I got a job because of the PCs. Kind of ironic that 4 decades later, I'm standing here because of the PCs. You know, they screwed up and there was a massive protest vote that got the NDP elected. That socialist victory was spurred by anger at the PCs, but it was also a matter of mathematics, pretty simple math. 2 conservative parties split that vote and the NDP went up the middle. That's the math. That's how it happened. And we can't let it happen again. So that's why we're here today. You know, I came back from retirement. I was literally in the sun, on the sand in Mexico when the NDP got elected. And I could sit there and complain to my wife, I guess, about my beloved Alberta, but decided to come back and take this high-paying volunteer job to try to get the Conservative parties in Alberta back together. I'm a multi-generational Albertan. I was born in Edmonton, in Lethbridge, believe it or not, back in the day. But that was then, of course this is now, and we have our kids and our grandkids to worry about. And going forward, the socialist government is putting us in the ditch. Can you imagine a $57 billion debt? Do you remember Ralph Klein holding up the sign, debt-free, just a little over 10 years ago? $57 billion in debt. So, we're here to try to stop that. I know you're here, you're motivated, you want to come and find out what it is doing after just 1 year in power. The debt is one thing. We've got a $9 billion carbon tax that's going to take $1,000 out of your pocket every year just to make some environmentalists happy. To buy some social license from God knows who. Our credit rating is dropping constantly, even though Joe Ceci, the Minister of Finance, he was in New York and Toronto just to talk to them, to let them know how good we are back here, as if they couldn't read a balance sheet. So we are in trouble. Oh, by the way, you did hear what the Premier said about the carbon tax and how to avoid the carbon tax. You can avoid it. Just buy a new car. So all you had to do is go and buy a new car. Hey, buy an electric car. I know you're out of work, you got laid off because of the downturn, but just go to the bank and borrow some money and buy a new car, because that's what her government does. They just borrow more money. Well, these guys are killing us, and it's not slow. You know, I guess not all of us, not killing all of us, because if you're in a public sector union, you're golden. You know that you're good. You know, in this budget, even though the private sector is laying people off by the 100,000, this budget hires 3,000 more civil servants in public sector unions. They're hiring. The only people hiring in Alberta is the government. You know, private sector is the enemy, and the oil industry is target number 1. You know, Rachel Notley the other day was talking very warmly and soothingly about pipelines. We need more pipelines, she said. She met with Justin Trudeau, and they came away saying, we need more pipelines. You know, I don't believe it. I don't believe her for a minute. Her husband is a senior member of CUPE, and the Canadian Union of Public Employees in CUPE was an architect of what they call the LEAP Manifesto. You know that big document that the NDP is studying now? They want to keep oil in the ground. So I'm suspicious that Rachel Notley doesn't want to keep it in the ground, but her husband does. And he wrote this big NDP manifesto about how to change Canada. So I don't believe it. We heard a guy in Lethbridge stood up and talked to us. And he was looking for a $3 million loan for a small business project to expand his business. $3 million bucks. You know, in big business terms, that's not a lot of money. He went to 5 lenders. 5 lenders said no. Because you're in Alberta, because you have an NDP government, we're not lending you a dime. 5 lenders said no. So investment, he can't invest in his business, he can't expand his business, he can't employ more people because we have an NDP government. So, we're not just, and I want to tell you about what we are and what we are not. The Alberta Prosperity Fund, you're going to hear much more about what it is from our president and co-founder, Barry McNamara, but we are a not-for-profit, private corporation, politically active, who in the short term want to unify the common sense vote in Alberta. We are not, as some people have claimed, just a bunch of grumpy old PCers who want their jobs back. There is a group already doing that. There's another group doing that, so you'll hear about that. We're not cheerleaders for the Wild Rose. I do not have a party membership. I never have had one in any party. I am not a politician. I don't want to be one. I am here because I want the best for Alberta. And so does the Alberta Prosperity Fund. We're not a shop of partisan politicians who just want to get their jobs back. We're not a political party. We're not apologists for the PCs who helped drive us in the ditch before the NDP finished the job in the last few administrations of the PCs. So, I want to introduce a few people to you tonight. You're going to hear from the Alberta Prosperity Fund founder. You're going to hear from the other dignitaries we have here, and I say dignitaries because one of the people you're going to hear from is a lady who I consider to be a mentor. She phoned me and asked me to get involved in this organization. I didn't know anything about it, but because she phoned, I said I would. Her name is Heather Forsyth. Former PC cabinet minister in the Klein government, who eventually became a Wild Roser and became the interim leader of Wild Rose after the Daniel Smith debacle, the Christmas time slaughter. She became the interim leader, and she is here tonight. Heather, just wave your hand, say hello.
So we are Alberta's first and only, you got the back one, there we are. We're the first and only coordinated response to the union and foreign funded special interests that are putting a lot of us out of work and endeavoring to change the culture of this province. The idea for the Alberta Prosperity Fund goes back about 10 years when I was looking at the Kyoto report and the rise of radical environmentalism in Alberta. Sat down with a friend of mine who had, to whom Alberta has been very good and to whom he has now been very good in return. And he said, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, in the U.S. they have these political action committees. And so we went out to do a bit of a feasibility study. Here's what we heard. We heard, you know what? We've got a friendly government at the provincial level. We've got a friendly government at the federal level. I think we're just going to kind of hang low and hope this all goes away. And so he said, gee, Barry, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, I think we're just going to have to wait for the correction. The public spending, the size and the cost of government already growing beyond the 30% of GDP. This was shortly in the world applying to period when spending started to skyrocket again. So we waited, and along comes May 5th, 2015, and we have our correction. We've got a new democratic government in Alberta. Radical environmentalists have never been as well funded. They've never had the degree of public acceptance that they have. They've never been welcomed into the bosom of government as much as they are here in Alberta today. And they're winning. More importantly, they're taking about $6.57 million a year, using it to put many of us out of work, using it to put the conservative governments out of power, to overturn conservative policies, and really to change the climate of opinion and culture of not just Alberta, but the country. We sat down together, my buddy and I, and had beer in the same bar again. And, we were talking about what are we going to do. And a waitress came by and said to the waitress, you know, how's this new minimum wage thing impacting your job? I said, you know, folks don't understand there's a minimum wage, and you don't understand it's not all been implemented yet. And my tips are down about 20%, but this is Alberta, and we'll fix it. And you know what? That was the most inspiring thing I've heard. And so we looked across from the table from each other and we said, let's do this. Let's get this thing done. And so we registered with Alberta Prosperity. So that's who we are. I'll talk a little bit about what we do. Now you can move. We really have got three main steps in terms of becoming who we are and helping to change the climate of opinion in the province. So the first is we're going to raise independent individual and corporate contributions, funds that the political parties can't access. And we're going to use that to build our audience. And that's part of what this is about tonight. Folks like you in groups of 50, in groups of 100, 200, 300 people we had in Edmonton 2 weeks ago. In the heart of blood red Toryism, we had 300 people come out to talk about unity and to talk about merging the parties. And I'll tell you, we had every camera in the city up, every media in the city up. We dominated the media for a full 2 weeks following that. About 1.5 million in earned media. That's Edmonton. That's really encouraging. So we're going to raise individual and corporate gifts to build our audience. We're going to leverage that audience to build our membership. And we're going to build a membership that we can wield like a club to push the parties together. So our goal, as I'll talk about in a minute, 45,000 members in the next 18 months. 45,000 members is roughly 10,000 more members than PC and Wild Rose parties combined. So once we land at that, then we're going to call the leaders to come together. We're hearing a very strong message as we go into rooms like this, and that's from both Wild Rose and PC constituency associations are saying, we're ready to talk. We're just waiting for someone to tell us what to do. Well, I'm here to say this is what we're here for. And we're going to tell you, get together and talk and arrive at a decision. That's step number one. And that decision should be to work together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we plan on doing this. And what we're going to do is run proactive campaigns to educate voters. So what we found out, that the radical environmentalists, what they've been really good at is they have figured out the population. They've figured out who we are as Canadians. They figured out that as voters we're disengaged and we're just looking to hear what's good for us and what's bad for us, and we're inclined to believe the most convenient lie told to us. And we plan on running fact-based campaigns that can maybe kind of get on the other side of those lies and tell folks really this is what the energy industry is all about in Alberta and across Canada. Help folks understand that the restaurant business, these businesses of organizations like the community center, this is Alberta's energy industry. We're Alberta's energy industry. It extends beyond the simple act of extractive resources. So we plan on running proactive campaigns to educate voters. We're going to use polling and big data to unify the vote. We've got some of the best pollsters in Canada on staff and at the ready. And we're going to use technology to mobilize that vote to win when it counts. So we've got folks that are coming 20 years, 25 years in politics, in voter ID, GOTV expertise, some of the best political communicators, best political strategists. They're all here. These aren't folks that have been, long time paid by parties, so they're not looking to get their jobs back. These are people that are just very, very good at what they do, and they're looking to do it on a voluntary basis for us, and we're happy that they're here to do that. So why do we do this? And I think first reason why we do this is when the right is fractured, the left wins. That's just a simple equation. When the right is fractured, the left wins. 29 seats were lost in the last election to vote split. That's the majority. So because we couldn't get along, we couldn't figure out what the radical environmentalists have figured out more than a decade ago, they're willing to put their own vital interests and competing interests aside to work together to get the job done. Because we weren't willing to do that as conservatives, we lost 29 seats and we've got a new Democratic government. Next. Moreover, this is a redistribution term, a redistricting term, and we know that The rural ridings are under attack. We know that 10 of them are going to disappear before 2019. That will cost Wild Rose about 10 seats. So we know that going into 2019, if the two parties don't come together, give or take a by-election or two that's going to happen between now and then, you're going to have PCs even with Wild Rose. And what does that tell you for the prospects of unity? These two parties are going to be going head-to-head, and as folks like you are going to tell them to get their act together. Next, and moreover, because there's a new reality of electoral politics that I've already described to you here in Canada, where union and foreign-funded coalitions are spending millions of dollars to attack conservative parties, principles, and the industries that support them. And over the last 10 years, that equates to about $160 million that have been poured into Canada from U.S.-based foundations to ensure that the U.S. remains our only customer and they can get oil recovery. So, talk a little bit about our path forward. As I mentioned, we want to get to 45,000 members by 2019. So here's what that looks like. 726,000 Albertans voted for one Conservative Party or another in the last provincial election. This year we want 4% of them. We're not interested in party members. Party members, if they want to come along, that's great, but they tend to be hyper-partisan and really committed to their families, and that's fine, and we understand that. But voters are not, get up every morning, they don't think about politics, they just think about what's good for us, what's bad for us. We're after 4% of those that voted Conservative this year. That should be 25,000. That should get us slightly more by about 10,000 than Wild Rose has right now, and about 3/4 of the way there for the PC party members. 5% of that vote by 2017, 6% by 2018. That'll get us a $2.1 million war chest. Then we're independent from that nasty corporate money that folks like to smack us around with. So that's our goal. We hope by the end of tonight that you can switch that over, that you'll want to be part of what is becoming a growing team here. And so that's our story. Why I got involved. I came here in 1997 as the Reform Party of Canada's first fundraiser, so my experience is federal. I was one of the guys that slept on their cot during the United Alternative, slept on a cot in my office with about 5 brick Motorola phones around my waist, taking calls 24/7 for the United Alternative referendum, getting the 301 at the time riding associations all organized, isolating the immovables, figuring out who we can lean on, and figuring out who our friends were to pull all of this together. And I had a great work life. I was able to start a consultancy here that I don't think I could have started in any other province, in any other state in one province, and probably in any other city in North America. I was able to get really solid mentorship from guys like Scobie Hartley and Harley Hotchkiss and Winwork, and folks that would really help to make Alberta what it was. And I don't think I could have gotten that experience anywhere else. And I can tell you that as of this year, I don't think I can promise my children the same opportunity. I don't think any of us can.
We've been in Red Deer, we've been in High River, Lethbridge, Edmonton, we've got Medicine Hat to do, we've got Calgary to do. I, like Dave, came out of retirement. I stepped down as the interim leader when they called the election, and decided I was going to retire, spend some time with my husband. Saw what happened with the NDP, obviously, taking over, and by about late fall, I started to get a little antsy, and we saw some of these PACs popping up, which are political action committees. And I know I was talking to someone earlier, there's about 3 or 4 of them out there, and met with them. Was approached by all of them to join their organization, met with all of them. Sat with Barry, didn't know Barry from my previous political time, and liked what he was presenting to me, liked his short-term goals, which was the tour that we're doing, and then the long-term goals as we move forward, when we bring everybody together and they have one Conservative voice, one common sense Conservative voice in this province. I am going to tell you, as a Wild Rose MLA, I sat in the legislature for very long evenings with Rachel Notley and Brian Mason. Got to like them very much and shared life with them and listened to them as we debated in the legislature. What's disappointing to me with where they're going is the continual lies that she keeps feeding Albertans. When Rachel talks to you about liking pipelines, as the member of the official opposition who sat for many long hours in the legislature with her, I cannot recall in 5 years her ever saying one nice thing about the oil and gas industry in this province. Not one nice thing.
Well said.
Continuous talk of dirty oil. And now, because she knows to win and the next election, she all of a sudden likes pipelines. So what I'm saying to folks is, do not believe what she is telling you about pipelines. She's a socialist. They don't like pipelines. That's exactly the way she's going to try and get people to like her. I'm hoping, and I'm sure everyone else in this room is hoping, that we will get a pipeline. And I think that will happen, and she's ultimately going to take credit for it. So we're trialing the province. We need to get a single, common sense conservative vote in the next election. We're utilizing social media as much as we can. No one needs to realize how good social media is when they see the latest fiasco that Earls has come out with, buying their beef from Kansas. I posted something, a message to Earls yesterday afternoon, and it's had like 250 likes, 85 shares. So we're going to continue our social media and do as much as we can. We hope that tonight, when you hear what we have to say, that you will like us on Facebook, you will share where we're going on our messaging through Facebook. And again, I want to thank you very much for coming. I know taking a couple hours out on a night like this, we're all busy, so we appreciate it, and thank
Are
you.
those that are willing to put themselves out there and stand for election to public office and public service. I'm more like you. I grew up in meetings, going back almost 30 years now, in community halls, church basements, kitchens, and living rooms, and we organized and we were successful. My comments might have been advertised as being from the PC perspective, and certainly that's understandable because of the volunteer position that I once had with PC Alberta. My comments this evening, though, are those that echo those of many other Albertans. My goal is to keep this the best place to live, to work, and to raise a family. The actions of the current government have put those matters, the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations of all Albertans in great peril. The election result of last May has provided those of us, those with the same concerns, a great opportunity. One to evaluate, to reassess, to plan and move forward. And I'm a great one for quotes, and that inimitable quote machine of Winston Churchill had one that, however beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. Well, we got a result. We may not have liked it, but today we need the passion and the effort of those ready, willing and able to leave their egos at the door, to park their specific political ambitions for the moment, to construct the environment that cultivates and nurtures the next generation of politicians. My political upbringing, probably like a lot of folks in the room, came around the family dinner table. It was to work hard, be independent, responsible, be self-reliant. And yes, give back to the community. Give a hand up, not a handout. And I heard, pay your bills, avoid debt, and live within your means. And in the 90s, in the early part of this century, politically, socially, economically, that's what Albertans did. Yep, we all sacrificed, but we all sacrificed. It wasn't just civil servants, It wasn't just the oil patch. It wasn't just that owned businesses, and it wasn't just those that earned above a certain income. It was every single Albertan. And it resulted in two things. And two things that very few jurisdictions can say that they did. Number one, we paid off the debt. And secondly, by doing so, not only did that put Alberta on the map, it generated a pride in doing so. It established the Alberta Advantage, something that we all benefit from. And what was the political situation during that period when that was done? Albertans expressed their political will through electing one party, and by that party pulling together. But even in that one party, there wasn't always unanimity. But we got the best out of everybody. And during that time, Alberta was a huge beneficiary of the continuity of purpose and strength in the stewardship. Now overall, under Lockheed, Getty, Klein era, and yes, even through Stelmach and Redford, Alberta matured into a business and financial juggernaut, the very engine of the Canadian economy, and the best place, as I said before, to live, to work, and raise a family. Thousands of new Albertans moved here from other parts of Canada and the world because of and in recognition of that. We don't need government who at every turn apologizes for our collective situation and kowtows to those envious of our accomplishments. Alberta needs the return of a steady hand at the fiscal wheel to reestablish ourselves as a leader, and by doing so, we'll keep the alternatives open to our population, not crush them under the weight of deficit and debt. Beneficiary of the type of stewardship that I mentioned will be the entire province. Its current, and what for me is more important, is the future population, like my 4 grandkids. And that can only be done through the collaboration, if not outright combination, of the two existing centre-right parties. Both have their warts, both have a shared base of thought, but if we, again, here I'm going to throw another quote in there, if we open a quarrel between the past and the present, we shall find that we have lost the future. We need to put duct tape over the rearview mirror and the hard feelings that may have been sown, grow up and put Alberta first. And while many might say that the Alberta Advantage has disappeared, I would disagree, saying that it's just on hiatus. Today, just as there was 20 years ago, Albertans are just as determined. Albertans are just as independent. Albertans are, now more than ever, capable of reestablishing that advantage, but ensuring that it stays in place. And for these reasons, and for the sakes of our children and grandchildren, and the future of proud Albertans, we need the pragmatic, common sense voters rallied under a single, common political purpose. Thank you.
But like Dave said, I run campaigns, political campaigns. I joined the PC party back in about '87, and it was kind of my last campaign that put us down this road to Damascus, as it were. Running a campaign in Calgary Confederation, and I had Brian Gino door knocking for me. I had Rick McIver door knocking for us, and the executive directors of both of those parties, and lots of volunteers from both sides of the world. You sort of come to the conclusion that 80% of us probably agree on about 80% of policy, so it really shouldn't be all that difficult to get us together. So just a quick look at Calgary, and I know sort of the Chestermere riding goes a little bit around that, but it'll still give us a good snapshot. There's probably 10 seats that we lost in Calgary that we should have had in the last election, other than vote splitting. Now there's a big yellow patch in the northwest Calgary, and that was my riding, so that's why it's still yellow, and not one of the ones we lost. But North Central, huge upside. They've always been very sort of generally conservative ridings, and the last 3 elections, we've split a lot of the vote. And finally, the opportunity came where the left could take advantage of that, and they did. In the South, Calgary-Glenmore is a perfect example of what happens. Lyndon Johnson, the PC candidate there, lost by 6 votes. Pipeline or no pipeline, I still can't truly believe that they'll maintain that support. But a merged party should see at least 2 more seats in Calgary, 4+ in Edmonton, and rural, particularly, north and south, we should see at least 7+. So it makes a big difference. Now, some of this we've based on a little bit of the redistribution that Barry is talking about, and also a poll. You'll see me refer to a bunch of numbers coming up, but we ran a poll in mid-December. 3,000 people right across the province, a very varied distribution, and that's sort of what will be the undercurrent of some of the next few numbers. So just so you know the basis of some of those numbers. And if you have a question and you can't see something or can't hear something, don't be afraid to just flag me down. I don't mind being interrupted. And I know I'm chucking a whole lot of numbers at you, so I'm going to try and go fast enough to get off the stage fairly soon and let you talk, and slow enough that I don't rush through everything too much. So, a realistic redistribution. I mean, Barry put up a slide there that sort of said redistribution with the best case to the Conservatives. We don't really expect that because the government controls the redistribution process. So I think it'll be highly unfavorable to the Conservative side of the world. Now, we expect, this is all speculation. The process hasn't started yet. What'll happen is after the 2016 census goes out this summer, they'll take all the numbers back, get a sense of, once they have all the population numbers in down to each community, then they can strike the legislative committee, and then do the study, make some recommendations, then put those out for comment from public and legislature, and then they go back and do their final. But make no mistake, the government does control the process. Now, in the past, we've sort of had a 25% distribution model, meaning that the average population in any specific riding can vary by about 25% to allow for some of the NDP at 21, the Liberals at 8. Not sure, prefer not to say at 6. So basically 30 and 30, they're within that margin of error. You're sitting at the same number. Go ahead, Sam. We broke it down a little between Calgary and Edmonton, particularly because it really highlights the difference between the two cities. While Rose 30 in Calgary, but only 20 in Edmonton. PC is 29 in Calgary, 26 in Edmonton. NDP only 21.6 in Calgary, but 31.5 in Edmonton. So while Rose is still as much of a populist movement as it is a political party, it still has some growing up to do. And it has that element of that rebellious Alberta in them, and you see that goes elsewhere. Some of them would go to the Alberta Party, even small elements of the NDP rather than that. The PC party voters said 68.1% would go to this new party. Of NDP voters, even 21% would go to the new Conservative Party, which on its face seems really strange, but like we heard earlier, a lot of that 2015 vote was a protest, throw the bombs out kind of vote, as opposed to an ideological vote for the NDP. And they maintain 44% of their vote. But that does give you, I think, a fairly fair snapshot of where we think things go with a merged party. And so I want to close with the slide that Dave mentioned earlier, sort of the mixed messaging we're hearing from the party leaders. I'll start with Rick McIver and then got something on Brian Jean as well. But they've seemed open at times and not so open at other times. And so what we've heard from Rick is a merger isn't really on my mind. I think we're already occupying the right political real estate. We just have to earn back the trust of Albertans. The first thing that has to be done is put some time into reuniting the PC party. Only at that point can we have that further discussion. And then a blog post that you wrote started with "Over my dead body." And then Brian G. We believe the Wild Rose is in the driver's seat. The message is resonating with Albertans. They want to see one party on the right, a small C conservative, fiscally oriented party, which we are. I like my job and I'd like to keep it, and I do that by keeping my bosses happy, and those are the members of the Wild Rose Party. And then finally, it's not my job to unite the right, my job is to provide options. So it's clear that neither leader is quite ready. I think they'll have to be brought along by grassroots party members from both sides. Those of us who are members of a party have to have our jobs to do there, as well as Albertans, just voicing their opinion, and that's kind of what we're doing. What we're doing over here. Anyway, that's
go around the room. Ask everybody if they actually know anybody who voted NDP. I mean, as I talk to my neighbors, guys who see at the gym, Larry, I was like, who'd you vote for? And they all say, I didn't vote for him. Nobody will admit to it.
So strategic voting gone haywire is what it was. So here we are. These numbers are convincing to me that a united, common sense, one fiscally conservative option would do very well in the next election. So the question is, how do we get there? What's as Randy said, the road to Damascus, what's the option that you guys prefer? This is a listening tour. I want to listen to you. We've done this in every stop we've done across the province. What do you think should happen? Should it be a merge of the two parties somehow? Should they merge and have a new name? Should there be a brand new party, start over? Should we have status quo? Just let it go, and maybe one of them will get a majority by 2019 and form government. The two conservative parties are pretty much stuck at 30%. It's pretty much where they are.
Get a radio host guy to run for our new party, but no, Dave Taylor's busy. So anyway, yeah, for sure. I think if you had a new party, that's just now you're going to split the right wing, the PC vote three ways, right? Possibility of it, right? And we can't do that. And so we need to bring it together, but I don't think either one of our leaders at the moment on the parties can do that, right?
They needed a shakedown, a fat town. That's what, and I've heard lots of people say it. The Wild Rose, we've got no experience. And they were duped into crossing the floor and believing that we could unite us. I mean, we need somebody who's humble, who's a leader. I love Bill. You know, people could